rent, I couldn't help her with shit. Hey, then I'm feeling so stuck in this bitch. Car broke down, can't fix that shit. I cried at night, I admit that shit. Oh, too old, I whipped that bitch. She left me alone, but I miss that bitch. She texts right now like...
Kyle Lowry selling his house does not mean he's leaving Toronto. Right, let's just first clear the air there. The Toronto Raptors aren't going back this season. The team recently announced that they're going to be keeping everyone there in Tampa. There's no chance of playoff games in Toronto. So Kyle Lowry, seeing that the market is hot, just tossing his house out there, $5.3 million like it's nothing. Get some extra cash in his pocket while the market's hot. Maybe he's made a lot of money his career, so maybe he buys a bigger house in Toronto. Maybe either way, that doesn't mean he's going to leave Toronto this specific season, right? That doesn't mean the Raptors are trading him at the deadline. It has no correlation at all because Toronto's playing in Tampa for the entirety of the rest of the season. It could mean he's leaving at the end of the season in free agency. There could be a correlation there, but let's not speculate about that yet. Let's worry about this current 2021 season for the Toronto Raptors and for Kyle Lowry. So going back to the Miami Heat, you could put together a package of something like Kelly Olynyk, Andre Iguodala, and an asset, because that would match Kyle Lowry's $30 million salary. Toronto could take on those expiring contracts and pick up another guy, in Kelly Olynyk, who's a big man who can help Toronto there. Toronto can give more experience to some of their young guys off the bench, like Terrence Davis. Obviously, Malachi Flynn's in the G League right now, so that's not a guy you'd be bringing back to the roster anytime soon. But, you could open up the roster a little bit like that, and then you could add a young asset. And the first person I'm going to take directly off the table right now is Tyler Hero, because they were not going to deal him in a James Harden trade. And because of that, they're not going to deal him in a Kyle Lowry trade. There's just no way that happens. So automatically, you're removing their best young asset because they see superstar potential in him. So could you potentially get Duncan Robinson? That's another question. I say maybe. Is Precious Achiuwa a little more realistic? Probably. Maybe Duncan Robinson might be a little too much to give up. Maybe you give up Precious. Maybe you give up a protected first-round pick. And then you get back an all-star in Kyle Lowry, who we know can still bring it. He still has value to a team. And then you have this team of Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, potentially Duncan Robinson still in that roster as well. And then some of the other bench guys they have, like Tyler Hero, Goran Dragic as well. This team is amazing. That team is a title contender, and they're right up there with the Brooklyn Nets, in my opinion, if you add Kyle Lowry to the mix there. He just takes a really good team and puts them over the top to a championship contender. And maybe Kyle Lowry is their second 2B option even behind a guy like Bam, but he can run the offense. He doesn't have a lot of turnovers. He does things the right way. He can explode for 30 points in a game, no problem. We've seen Lowry do that all the time, and he's the heart and soul of a team. So I think his value is there in terms of if you get back a guy like Precious along with, like I said, Andre Iguodala and Kelly Olynyk, and maybe even a protected first-round pick, maybe not. Then you get a young prospect back for Kyle Lowry, and I think that's a good haul of a return. You can start developing a guy like Precious at the 5 for Toronto as a centerpiece moving forward, literally a center that they need moving forward, along with, Chris Boucher in that front court and Pascal Siakam. That's a good young core. And Toronto's selling on an asset that could be leaving anyway. And then the other team is Philly. So Toronto wouldn't want to take Tobias Harris's contract because it's 4 years and it's a ridiculous cost for a guy like Tobias Harris. And I think Philly wouldn't want to trade him either because under Doc's system, he's really good. So taking him off the table, obviously Ben Simmons and Embiid are off the table. They're trying to aggregate a big 4 together. They're trying to get a guy like Kyle Lowry in the mix to have that big 4. So they would end up having to trade a guy like Danny Green, who makes some money off the bench, potentially even a guy like Seth Curry, a guy like Mike Scott. These are a few contracts that you can match with Kyle Lowry's, who are on basically expiring contracts, if not 2-year deals. So Toronto can end up getting a guy like that back in return, just to fill the everything together, the cap space together. And then they got to look to potentially adding, a sweetener. So is that sweetener Tyrese Maxey? Is it maybe a draft pick? I don't know what they could really add to the mix there. Maybe Matisse Thybulle, but they've got to add one little sweetener in there to get Toronto interested. And I think as a Raptors fan, I'd be interested in a guy like Tyrese Maxey, a really young guy, or even Matisse Thybulle, who's shown defensive potential. I'd prefer Maxey, but who knows what Kyle Lowry's value is. I think you can get one young prospect out of a trade like that. So you could get a guy like Tyrese Maxey and put him next to those guys. And we know that Daryl Morey loves making moves like this. He wants to compete. He wants to contend. And despite Philly's amazing record, you know, they're reaching a ceiling. And you know what? Maybe they're thinking we could get Kyle Lowry next season, add him to the mix if it doesn't work. But when you look at the issues that the Philadelphia 76ers have, a lot of it is offensive related challenges that they have. You know, Embiid's a monster, we know that, but everything around him sometimes doesn't work. This year it's been better, but a guy like Kyle Lowry can man the floor, he can shoot the three, he'll reduce the turnovers that a team like this has, he can be a secondary ball handler next to Ben Simmons, a guy who can get Embiid the ball every time in the post, a guy who spaces the floor, and a guy who brings defensive pros to his game as well. He's not a negative defender by any means, he's one of the better point guard defenders in the league. So I think it would be a really good move for them. And for Toronto, you get a young prospect back, you get a few expiring contracts, you could dump a guy like Danny Green back out to another team, maybe try and get like a second round pick back in return for him, to a team that needs a shooter. So then Toronto can end up just gathering some assets and moving forward with this mini rebuild that they want to do. And I think it would be a good move for Toronto to trade him. But at the end of the day, I also wouldn't want to see him go because he's Kyle Lowry. He's the team's champion. He really is the heart and soul of this Raptors squad, and losing him would be very, very disappointing because of all the history we have with Kyle Lowry, all the clutch shots. He won the championship with us. He was one of our best players. He's the greatest Raptor of all time. So if he does want to leave, it's all on him. He's got to make the decision. He's got to be the executive and say, hey, Masai, I want out. Because if he doesn't want out, we don't want him out. That's the truth.